In the heart of the azure peaks, where the air is so thin, it tastes like starlight, lies the archive of floating silences. It is not a library of books or scrolls, but a vast, open-air cathedral of glass pillars, rising from a sea of lavender mist. Here, the world's most precious things are kept, not gold or jewels, but the sounds that were never heard. The laughter of a solitary traveler, the sigh of a blooming desert flower, and the unspoken words of lovers separated by oceans. The keeper of this archive is an elderly woman named Thalira, whose hair is as white as the mountain snow, and whose eyes hold the clarity of a winter morning. She moves through the pillars with a grace that defies her age, carrying a staff of polished driftwood that glows with a faint amber ember at its tip. Her task is to ensure that no silence is ever forgotten, for she believes that the world stays in balance only as long as its quietest moments are honored. On a night when the twin moons were full and the frost began to paint silver patterns on the glass pillars, a young wanderer named Ilian reached the archive's gates. He had traveled for 7 years, crossing the great dust deserts and the iron forests, carrying a heavy burden in his heart. He sought a specific silence, one he had lost long ago in the noise of a great battle. He sought the silence of his childhood home, before the first stone was ever thrown. Thalira met him at the entrance, her amber staff illuminating the mist around his tired feet. She did not ask for his name or his purpose, for in the archive, the soul speaks through its presence alone. She led him deep into the forest of glass, where the pillars were taller and the light was dim. They walked past crystals that vibrated with the sound of falling snow, and others that held the stillness of a deep forest at midnight. Finally, they reached a pillar that stood alone in a circle of white sand. Unlike the others, this one was not clear. It was filled with a swirling pearlescent smoke. Thalira gestured for Ilian to place his hand against the cold surface. As his fingers touched the glass, the noise of the world, the clashing of swords, the shouting of crowds, the relentless ticking of clocks began to fade away. Inside his mind, a door opened. He saw the hearth of his mother's kitchen, the steam rising from a bowl of broth, and the way the sunlight hit the wooden floorboards on a Tuesday afternoon. There were no voices, no music, only the perfect golden peace of a home at rest. It was the silence he had been searching for. It wasn't empty. It was full of safety, belonging, and a love that required no words. Ilian closed his eyes, his breath slowing until it matched the rhythmic pulse of the amber light. Tears that had been frozen in his heart for years began to melt, falling softly into the lavender mist. He stayed there for hours, or perhaps days, Time has no meaning in the archive. When he finally stepped away, the heavy weight in his chest had vanished. Talira smiled, her face lit by the warm ember of her staff. Every silence you cherish becomes a star in the sky, she whispered, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. Elian looked up and saw that the night sky was indeed brighter than he had ever seen it. He left the archive not as a wanderer, but as a man who had found his way back to himself. As he descended the mountain, the lavender mist followed him, a soft reminder that even in the loudest world, the most powerful thing one can possess is the peace of a quiet heart.
Deep within the sun-drenched valley, where the trees have leaves of hammered copper, and the rivers run with a liquid golden light, there is a sanctuary known as the Grove of the Eternal Hearth. It is a place hidden by a veil of warm mist, accessible only to those whose spirits are weary and whose hearts seek a moment of absolute stillness. In the center of this grove, cradled by the roots of a colossal, ancient cedar burns a fire that has no smoke and requires no fuel. It is the eternal hearth, a flame born from the first spark of kindness ever felt in the world. The guardian of the grove is a spirit named Orin, whose form is woven from flickering embers. And the soft scent of burning cedarwood Orin does not speak in words, but in the comforting crackle of a fire on a winter's night. His task is to tend to the travelers who find their way here, offering them a warmth that seeps not just into their skin, but into the very marrow of their weary souls. One autumn evening, as the copper leaves began to fall in soft, rhythmic spirals, a clockmaker named Alaric arrived at the edge of the mist. He had spent his entire life measuring time, obsessed with the ticking of gears and the relentless march of seconds. His hands were stained with oil, and his eyes were clouded with the fatigue of 1,000 sleepless nights spent trying to catch a moment that had already passed. He felt as though he were a spring wound too tight, on the verge of snapping. Orin met him at the threshold, the spirit's amber glow reflecting in Alaric's tired eyes, with a gentle gesture of a hand made of light. Orin led the clockmaker toward the center of the grove. As they approached the eternal hearth, the air grew thick with a sense of safety. It was the warmth of a childhood blanket, the glow of a lantern in a window, and the peace of a long overdue rest. Alaric sat by the fire, his heavy tools forgotten at his side. He watched the flames which did not roar or hiss, but danced in a slow hypnotic cadence. As he stared into the amber heart of the hearth, he realized that for the first time in his life he couldn't hear the ticking of his watches. The frantic rhythm of time had dissolved into the quiet pulse of the forest. He felt the tension in his fingers begin to melt away, the rigid gears of his mind finally finding their alignment. In the dance of the embers, Alaric saw visions of the things he had missed while chasing time. The way the morning dew clings to a spider's web, the slow unfolding of a rose and the silent patience of the stars. He understood then that time was not a machine to be mastered, but a river to be felt. The eternal hearth was a reminder that some things, the most important things, exist outside of seconds and hours. They simply are. He stayed by the fire until his breath became a steady, calm wave. When the first light of dawn began to turn the copper leaves into gold, Alaric stood up. His hands were steady, and his heart felt light, as though the heavy brass of his past had been forged into something much softer and more resilient. As he left the grove, Orin gave him a single, glowing ember held within a small, heatless crystal. Take the warmth with you, the spirit's crackle seemed to say. Alaric walked back toward his village, not to measure time but to live it. He knew that whenever the world became too loud or the gears turned too fast, he carried the stillness of the eternal hearth within him, a golden spark that no winter could ever extinguish.
On the far western edge of the known maps, beyond the reach of any wind or storm, lies a place called the Shore of the Sleeping Moons. It is a coast where the sand is made of crushed pearls, and the ocean does not roar with waves, but flows like liquid silver, moving in a slow, rhythmic tide that hums a melody only the soul can hear. In the sky above this shore, the moons do not simply pass by. They linger, casting a soft, pearlescent glow that turns the world into a realm of permanent, gentle twilight. The guardian of this shore is a being named Lyra, whose cloak is woven from the reflections of the stars upon the water. She walks the coastline with a lantern made of sea glass, and inside it, a single bioluminescent jellyfish pulses with the light of 1,000 calm dreams. Lyra's task is to guide the weary voyagers who've spent their lives navigating the turbulent seas of ambition and worry, helping them to finally drop their anchors in the harbor of inner peace. One quiet evening, a captain named Kalen reached the pearl sands of the shore. His ship, the Endless Horizon, was a vessel of scars and weathered wood. Having survived 100 gales and 1,000 restless nights, Kalen himself was a man of steel and salt, his face etched with the lines of constant vigilance. He had forgotten the sound of silence, his ears forever tuned to the creak of the mast and the warning of the wind. He was a master of the storm, but a stranger to the stillness. Lyra met him as he stepped onto the shore, her lantern casting long, gentle shadows across the white sand. She did not ask about his cargo or his destination. Instead, she led him to a cluster of glowing coral trees that grew near the water's edge. "The sea you sailed was made of your thoughts," she whispered, her voice sounding like the soft lap of water against a calm boat. "But here, the water is made of your breath. Breathe with the tide, Captain." Kalen sat beneath the coral branches, watching as the liquid silver ocean touched his boots. At first, his mind raced with the habits of the sea, checking the knots, watching the horizon, preparing for the turn of the tide. But as he watched the moons reflected in the water, he noticed that they didn't move. They simply stayed, suspended in a state of perfect, glowing rest. The liquid silver began to wash away the salt and the fatigue from his spirit, the rhythm of the tide slowly syncing with the beating of his heart. He realized then that he had spent his entire life fighting the currents, always trying to reach a shore that didn't exist. The endless horizon was not a ship he sailed, but a burden he carried. As he watched the silver tide, he felt the heavy chains of his responsibilities dissolve into the glowing mist. The roar of the old storms in his mind was replaced by the soft, crystalline hum of the sleeping moons. He wasn't a captain anymore. He was just a man, finally at rest. In the depths of that silvery water, Kalen saw the reflections of all the beautiful things he had been too busy to notice. The geometry of a snowflake, the slow orbit of a firefly, and the way a single drop of rain can hold the entire sky. He understood that the greatest journey was not the one that crossed the world, but the one that found the center of the self. He stayed on the pearl sands until the stars began to sing a soft lullaby. When he finally stood up, his ship was gone, replaced by a small wooden skiff that required no sails. He didn't need to fight the wind anymore. The silver tide would take him exactly where he needed to be. As he drifted away into the moonlit mist, Lyra raised her lantern in a final silent blessing. Kalen closed his eyes, his spirit as calm as the liquid silver, knowing that the storm was finally over and the true voyage had just begun.
High above the highest peaks of the world, where the air becomes a thin veil of crystal, and the clouds are but a distant carpet of white wool, lies the library of the weaver's sky. This is not a place of stone or wood, but a grand observatory of obsidian glass and suspended starlight. Within its infinite halls, there are no paper books or heavy scrolls. Instead, the walls are lined with thousands of glass vials, each containing a single glowing thread of a constellation, the luminous memories of the stars themselves. The keeper of this celestial library is a scribe named Onon, whose skin is the color of deep twilight and whose robes are embroidered with the shifting patterns of the zodiac. She moves silently through the glowing aisles, her feet never quite touching the polished floor. Onon's task is to listen to the silent songs of the heavens and to weave the stray light of fallen stars back into the great tapestry of the night, ensuring that every soul below has a map to guide them through the darkness. One breathless night, an architect named Alara found her way to the library's threshold. Alara had spent her life building magnificent cities of marble and gold, obsessed with the geometry of perfection and the rigid lines of order. But the noise of the world had become a deafening roar in her mind. Her blueprints had turned into a tangled web of stress, and the cities she built felt like cages of her own making. She had lost the ability to look up, her eyes forever fixed on the stone beneath her feet. Aonun met her at the Great Arch of Orion, her presence as calm as a summer night. She did not ask for Alara's credentials or her plans. She simply handed the architect a small, empty crystal sphere and led her to the balcony of infinite echoes. You have spent your life trying to contain the world within walls, Aonon whispered, her voice sounding like the faint chime of distant bells. But the sky cannot be caged, it must be woven. Look at the stars not as points of light, but as the breaths of the universe. Alara looked up, and for the first time in decades, she truly saw the sky. Aonon opened one of the vials, releasing a thread of silver light that began to dance around Alara's fingers. As the light touched her, the frantic calculations and the heavy weight of her structures began to dissolve. She realized that the most beautiful things were not the ones held together by mortar and stone, but the ones held together by the invisible threads of connection and peace. The obsidian walls of the library seemed to hum in a low, resonant frequency that matched the beating of her heart. Alara felt the rigid geometry of her mind soften,
the sharp angles of her worry smoothing out into the elegant curves of a nebula. She wasn't building anymore, she was unfolding. The library of the Weaver's sky was a reminder that everything, from the smallest pebble to the grandest galaxy, was part of the same slow and beautiful design. She stayed on the balcony until her spirit felt as light as the stardust drifting through the halls. When she finally prepared to leave, Unknown placed a single, glowing thread of silver light into Elara's crystal sphere. This is the constellation of stillness. The scribe said, whenever the walls of the world feel too close, look into this light and remember the vastness that lives within you. Elara descended from the peaks not as an architect of stone, but as a weaver of dreams. The cities she built from that day on were different. They were filled with gardens of light and spaces where the wind could sing. She knew that she was never truly lost, for she carried a piece of the weaver's sky in her pocket, a silent anchor in an ocean of stars, reminding her that the most enduring structures are the ones built from peace.
Deep within the sunless rift, a hidden valley carved into the roots of the world, lies the sanctuary of the whispering ferns. It is a realm where the sun never directly reaches, yet it is never dark. The light here is bioluminescent, a soft pulsating green and turquoise that emanates from the moss-covered stones and the giant, prehistoric ferns that arch overhead like the ribs of a living emerald cathedral. In this valley, time does not move in seconds or minutes. It moves in the slow, rhythmic unfurling of a leaf and the patient drip of mineral-rich water into crystal-clear pools. The guardian of this sanctuary is a being named Aloan, whose skin is the texture of silver bark and whose hair is a flowing tapestry of living ivy and small, glowing blossoms. She does not walk so much as she flows with the breath of the forest, her presence marked by the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. Aloan's task is to listen to the roots of the world and to teach the restless spirits that wander into her domain the art of being still. She believes that the soul, like a seed, requires darkness and silence to truly find its strength. One humid evening, a messenger named Ryland found his way into the rift. Ryland had spent his life in the service of the Great Spire cities, known as the swiftest runner in the kingdom. His life was a blur of deadlines, frantic heartbeats, and the constant pressure of the next horizon. He lived in the now, so intensely that he had forgotten the always. His body was a knot of tension, and his mind was a storm of half-finished thoughts and urgent whispers. He was running not towards something, but away from the silence he feared was chasing him. Aloan met him at the edge of the first echo, where the ferns grow so thick they form a soft, breathing wall. She did not ask for his message or his destination. She simply beckoned him to follow her to the pool of the slowest ripple. "You have traveled many leagues in a day," she said, her voice sounding like the gentle rustle of leaves in a summer breeze. "But how far have you traveled within yourself? The forest does not race to grow. It simply unfolds. Rest your feet, scribe of the wind." Ryland sat upon a bed of glowing moss, his legs trembling from the sudden stop. At first, the silence of the valley was terrifying. It felt heavy, pressing against his ears like deep water. He wanted to jump up to check his maps, to count the miles left to go. But as he watched a single fern leaf slowly uncurling over a mirror-like pool, he noticed the rhythm. It was a pulse deep and steady, coming from the very earth beneath him. As the hours passed in the emerald twilight,
Ryland felt the frantic pace of his life beginning to lose its grip. The constant hurry in his blood started to cool, replaced by the cool, steady sap of the forest wisdom. He realized that in his race to be everywhere, he had ended up nowhere. The sanctuary of the whispering ferns was a reminder that the most important growth happens when we aren't looking, in the quiet spaces between our actions. The ferns whispered secrets of patience into the air, their spores drifting like tiny green stars. They spoke of the centuries it took to carve the valley and the millennia the trees had spent reaching for the light. Ryland felt his own spirit stretching out like a root, finding purchase in the deep, fertile silence of the sanctuary. He wasn't a messenger anymore. He was a part of the unfolding. The tension in his shoulders dissolved into the moss, and the storm in his mind settled into a calm, sun-dappled glade. He stayed in the rift until his heart beat in perfect unison with the forest's slow pulse. When he finally rose to leave, Elowen handed him a small, smooth stone that pulsed with a faint green light. "This is a seed of patience," she whispered. "Whenever the world demands you run, hold this stone and remember the valley that grows in silence." Ryland emerged from the sunless rift, not as a runner of the wind, but as a walker of the earth. He still delivered his messages, but he did so with a steady stride and a quiet mind. He knew that no matter how fast the world turned, he carried the sanctuary of the whispering ferns within him. A cool, green sanctuary where time stood still and the soul was free to grow at its own beautiful pace.
Deep beneath the whispering mountains, in a place where the weight of the world is felt not as a burden, but as a warm embrace, lie the caverns of the Luminous echo. This is a subterranean world where the darkness is never absolute. The walls are encrusted with colossal, translucent crystals that pulse with a soft, rhythmic violet and gold light. In these caverns, sound behaves differently. Every whisper is transformed into a monile chord, and every footstep creates a ripple of light that dances across the crystalline floor like a pebble dropped into a pool of mercury. The guardian of these caverns is a being named Caliph, whose form is composed of polished quartz and flickering candlelight. Caliph does not speak through breath, but through the vibration of the stones themselves, a deep and resonant hum that vibrates in the chest of anyone who enters. Caliph's task is to curate the resonance of truth, a collection of vibrations that reflect the purest states of the soul. Here there are no lies, no masks, and no pretenses. There is only the fundamental frequency of peace. One cold winter night, a scholar named Thorn sought refuge in the caves. Thorn had spent his life in the great archives of the North, buried under a mountain of facts, logic, and conflicting theories. His mind was a frantic library of half-truths and overwhelming data. He had analyzed the world so much that he could no longer feel it. His thoughts were like jagged shards of glass clashing against one another in a never-ending storm of why and how. He was a man of infinite knowledge but zero clarity, wandering in a maze of his own intellectual making. Caliph met him at the arch of the first vibration, where the crystals are as clear as mountain air. The guardian did not ask for Thorn's theories or his titles, Caliph simply led the scholar to the chamber of the deep resonance, a perfect sphere of hollowed amethyst. You have looked for the truth in the ink of dead poets and the logic of cold stars. The guardian's vibration echoed through the floor. But truth is not a thought. It is a frequency. It is the sound of your heart when it no longer has anything to prove. Sit, scholar of shards. Thorn sat in the center of the amethyst chamber, his mind still trying to categorize the mineral composition of the walls. But as the silence of the cave began to vibrate, he felt a strange sensation. The crystals began to hum at a frequency that matched the chaotic rhythm of his thoughts. At first, it was jarring, like a dissonant orchestra. But slowly, the crystals began to pull his thoughts into alignment. The why and the how began to lose their sharp edges, dissolving into the warm, steady glow of the violet light. He realized that the world was not a puzzle to be solved, but a song to be heard. The caverns of the luminous echo were a reminder that beneath the noise of our opinions and the clutter of our knowledge, there is a fundamental stillness that
In the vast golden plains of the Great Meridian, where the grass grows as tall as a man and waves like a sea of emerald silk, there travels a legend known as Aethelgard. Aethelgard is not a mountain or a fortress, but the last of the Earthwalkers, a titan made of ancient stone and living moss, so massive that his shoulders touch the clouds. Upon his broad, steady back sits a city of white marble and hanging gardens, a sanctuary of narrow streets and quiet courtyards known as the Wandering Horizon. In this city, the rhythm of life is dictated not by clocks, but by the slow, thunderous, and rhythmic heartbeat of the giant beneath them. The guardian of the city is a woman named Sora. The high bell ringer, her home is a tower built into the giant's neck, where she tends to a collection of silver bells that chime softly with every step. Aethelgard takes Sora does not look for storms or enemies. She looks for the balance of the stride. Her task is to remind the citizens that as long as they trust the giant's path, they are safe. She believes that the greatest anxiety of the soul comes from trying to steer a world that is already moving in perfect harmony. One sweltering afternoon, a general named Cassian reached the plains and climbed the long, winding stair that leads to Ethelgard's feet. Cassian had spent his life in the iron cities of the East, a world of sharp edges, rapid expansion, and the constant conquest of territory. He was a man of maps and strategies, a man who believed that if he wasn't moving forward with force, he was falling behind. But the years of war had left him hollow. His mind was a battlefield of past regrets and future fears, a jagged landscape of what if and must do. He was a master of the march, but he had forgotten how to simply stand still. Sora met him at the city gates, her silver bells tinkling in the mountain breeze. She saw the rigid line of his shoulders and the restless fire in his eyes. She did not ask for his rank or his victories. She simply led him to the garden of the swaying palms, a place at the very center of the giant's back. You have spent your life trying to conquer the earth. Sora's voice was as steady as the horizon. But here, the earth carries you. Sit, soldier of the storm. Let the giant take your weight. Cassian sat upon a stone bench, his hand instinctively reaching for a sword that was no longer there. At first, the motion was unsettling. Every few minutes, a deep, low-frequency thrum would vibrate through the bench. The sound of Aethelgard taking a single mile-long step. The city would tilt ever so slightly, a gentle sway that felt like a cradle in the sky to Cassian, who was used to the unyielding ground of his fortresses. This lack of control was terrifying. He wanted to fix the world, to stabilize it, to make it stop moving. But as the sun began to set, painting the golden plains in shades of amber and violet, the rhythm began to win. He noticed that the birds in the hanging gardens didn't flutter in fear when the giant stepped. They simply tucked their heads under their wings and swayed with the branch. He saw the children playing in the streets, their laughter rising and falling with the same cadence as the bells. Slowly, the rigid armor of Cassian's mind began to soften.
He realized that his entire life had been a frantic struggle to hold on to things that were never meant to be held. The wandering horizon was a reminder that we are all travelers on a path we did not choose, carried by forces far greater than ourselves. He felt the heavy iron chains of his ambition beginning to melt into the golden light. He wasn't a general anymore. He was a passenger. The tension in his chest, which had felt like a coiled spring for 20 years, finally snapped, not in violence, but in release. In the slow swaying of the city, Cassian saw the beauty of the journey. He understood that peace was not found at the end of the road, but in the trust you place in the walk itself. The giant Ethelgard didn't know where the horizon ended, and he didn't care. He simply walked, because walking was his nature. He stayed in the city until his spirit felt as steady as the Titan's heartbeat. When he finally prepared to descend, Sora handed him a small silver bell no larger than a thimble. "This is the echo of the giant's heart," she whispered. "Whenever you feel the need to rush toward a tomorrow that hasn't arrived, ring this bell and remember the sway. Trust the journey, Cassian." Cassian emerged from the Great Meridian not as a conqueror, but as a wanderer. He returned to the Iron Cities, but he did not build more walls.
At the very edge of the world, where the curtain of reality meets the soft light of the infinite, lies the Garden of the Final Amber. It is a place that exists in the timeless moment between the lost breath of the sun and the first sigh of the moon. In this garden, the flowers are not made of petals and stem, but of pure, concentrated warmth, golden blossoms that glow like embers in a hearth, casting a soft, flickering light upon paths of velvet shadow. This is the destination of every story ever told, the sanctuary where all the whispers, fires, tides, and stars finally come to rest. The keeper of this garden is a being known simply as the Elder of the Glow. He is a figure of soft light and woven twilight, his hands moving with the gentleness of a falling leaf. He does not guard the garden against intruders, for only those who are truly ready for peace can find the Golden Gate. His task is to collect the last, fading embers of the day and plant them in the fertile silence of the night, ensuring that even in the deepest darkness, there is a seed of light waiting to bloom. On a night when the air was still, and the stars seemed to lean closer to the earth, a traveler reached the garden's edge. This traveler had no name, for they carried the weight of 1,000 journeys. They had seen the archive of silences, felt the heat of the eternal hearth, sailed the silver tide, and walked the back of the gentle giant. Their spirit was a tapestry of all the places they had been, but the threads were frayed and the colors were beginning to dim. They were not looking for another adventure. They were looking for the end of the road. The elder met them at the arch of the setting sun, where the golden embers fell from the trees like warm, glowing rain. He saw the stories etched into the traveler's soul, the echoes of every valley and cave they had crossed. He did not ask where they had been or what they had lost. He simply handed the traveler a lantern made of translucent honeystone. "You have carried the weight of the world for long enough." The elder's voice was a low, resonant hum that felt like a warm embrace. Here the stories do not need to be told. They simply need to be felt. Step into the glow. The traveler walked into the heart of the garden, where the golden flowers swayed in a breeze that carried the scent of sandalwood and old memories. As the amber light touched them, a remarkable thing happened. The memories of their struggles, the storms, the noise, the frantic races, and the cold shadows did not disappear.
Instead, they were transformed. The sharp edges of their pain turned into soft, glowing embers. The heavy armor of their fatigue became a light, golden cloak. In the center of the garden stood the great Hearth tree, its branches heavy with fruit that looked like burning coals. The traveler sat beneath its roots, and for the first time in an eternity, the silence was perfect. It wasn't the silence of an empty room, but the silence of a completed song. They realized that every journey they had taken, every part of the 8-part path, had been a preparation for this moment of absolute, golden surrender. The elder sat beside them, his presence a steady anchor in the sea of light. The ember does not die when it stops burning bright, he whispered. It simply returns to the warmth of the earth. You are home now. The traveler closed their eyes, and as they did, the entire garden began to glow with a brilliance that was both blinding and incredibly soft. The amber light of the garden and the light within the traveler's soul became one and the same. They felt themselves dissolving into the warmth, becoming a part of the flowers, the wind, and the eternal sunset. They weren't a traveler anymore. They were the peace they had been searching for. As the first true star of the dream night appeared, the garden of the final amber folded itself into the heart of the world. The traveler had finally found the rest that is not just sleep, but the beautiful golden beginning of a dream that never ends. And in the quiet of the night, a single new flower bloomed, a golden ember, glowing for all who are still on the way.